In this part of the series, I'm going to look at what a Tihai is. And before we do that, I'm going to politely warn you that I'm going to get technical in this episode. It's the only way I really can explain what a Tihai is. So if you're someone that's not musically minded or mathematically minded, you might find it difficult to understand. But hopefully you'll get an overview of what a Tihai does and what its function is in music. More recently, Western composers have been inspired by Tihais and have used them in their own compositions, either in the form of a motif or a cell. But let's look at what a Tihai actually is and what it does. If you saw my episode on Tala, or rhythmical pattern phrase, you'll remember that I spoke about how important the downbeat is in Indian classical music. And when I say downbeat, I mean the first beat of the cycle. So whether you have a 7-beat cycle or an 8-beat cycle or a 16-beat cycle, beat number 1 is all important. A Tihai could be defined as a musical device or mechanism or technique whereby the performers of especially Indian classical music create a sense of tension and then release it. So what actually is it in musical terms? Well, a Tihai is a repeated phrase or pattern, but it's repeated 3 times. And it's a phrase that when it's repeated 3 times, it ends on the downbeat of the cycle. So it's a bit like a hop, skip and a jump. Well, technically speaking, it's like a skip, skip and a skip because they're all the same. And then the last skip lands on the downbeat of the cycle. The skip, as it were, could be of any length or any shape. It could even be unconnected with the original cyclic phrase. But it's a bit like saying, okay, this is happening over here. This is my background cycle or my background piece. And what I'm going to do in my improvisation is take a bit of a diversion, do my hop, skip and a jump, and then land back on the downbeat. So you can see that it's a mathematical construction in a way, but it is very exciting. Some of the hop, skips and jumps are very long and they can take quite a while, but they're very exciting as the performer builds up the tension and the audience are sitting there waiting for it to land on the downbeat. Let me demonstrate a very simple Tihai, and hopefully that will give you an example of how it works and show you the mechanism of it. I've got my metronome here and it's set up to play a 4-beat cycle, so a very simple 1, 2, 3, 4, for example. So I'm assuming that my foundation piece or the melodic cycle is 4 beats. So let's just have a listen to this. And the high-pitched sound is the downbeat. 2, 3, 4, 1. So that's our, let's just say that's our cyclic pattern, and that's going to continue either through melody or through melodic phrase or a song. So we could have a song. I'm just going to make up a silly song now. So let's say, would you like a cup of tea? Would you like a cup of tea? Would you like a cup of tea? Okay. That's not going to be a #1 hit single, but you never know nowadays. Anyway, so would you like a cup of tea? That's my basic foundation. And I'm going to create a Tihai. So I'm going to say, while this person is saying, would you like a cup of tea? My component, which I'm going to do 3 times, I'm going to create as being cup of tea. Now I've got to say cup of tea or have a cup of tea. Let's say have a cup of tea. I'm going to say it 3 times so that the tea lands on the downbeat of this. So 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Have a cup of tea, have a cup of tea, have a cup of tea. So if you noticed, my last beat in my Tihai was the word tea, and it landed on the wood. I can't do both at the same time, but it would land on would you like a cup of tea? So let's try it one more time. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Have a cup of tea, have a cup of tea, have a cup of tea. That is a Tihai. I shouldn't have chosen the word T, should I, anyway? Now, a Tihai could be full of notes and it could be full of rests or spaces. So I could leave out the word have in my have a cup of tea Tihai. So let's just try that. 2, 3, 4. Cup of tea, cup of tea, cup of tea.
Would you like a cup of tea?
Would you like a
cup of tea, cup of tea? So I'm going to play that on my tabla, exactly the same pattern. 2, 3, 4. Have a cup of tea, have a cup of tea, have a cup of tea.
Would you like a cup of tea?
Would you like a cup of tea?
Have a cup of tea. And now without the have, 2, 3, 4.
Would you like a cup of tea? Would.
So now that's a very, very small Tihai. People from their own gharanas and their own styles and their own house styles of playing create massive passages of Tihais, and they could be as complex as they make them. They could be have a cup of tea, 2 gulab jamuns, a samosa, and a biscuit, for example, and they would do that 3 times and then land on the downbeat of the cycle. Usually, while the Tihaiist is doing that, the other soloist would be keeping a pedal or keeping the cycle simple. Now let's look at a slightly more complicated Tihai, and I'll create another one here for you. So let's get back to my 4-beat cycle. I'm just working out. So we've got our song going. 1, 2, 3, 4. Would you like a cup of tea? Or whatever it is. Now my Tihai, I've created a structure, a different structure of have a cup of tea. And I could do this. 2, 3, 4.
Would you like a cup of tea? Would you like a cup of tea?
1,
Would you
2,
like a cup of tea?
1.
Would you
Like a cup of tea?
Would
Have
you
a
like
cup
a
of tea.
cup of tea?
Have a
Would
cup
you
of tea.
Like a cup
Have
of
a
tea?
cup of tea.
Would.
So again, my T landed on the downbeat. That was a 2-bar Tihai. So let me just play that on the tabla for you, just to show you. I'll try and keep this going. 2, 3, 4, 1,
Would you
2,
like a
3,
cup of
4.
Would you
Like
like
a
a
cup of tea?
Would you like a cup
of tea? Would.
So that was 2 very simple Tihais that I made up on the spot, so to speak, with a bit of preparation. But hopefully it gives you an example and demonstrates how Tihais work. So there are 2 people with different journeys that then collide on the downbeat. In fact, if you're a drummer or a drum kit player or a percussionist, you probably have played a very simple Tihai many, many times in your life. And the standard drum kit fill is actually a Tihai. So if I was to play, let me get my 4-beat cycle going again. So if you're playing a drum kit pattern, doom, ba, doom, ba, doom, ba, doom, ba, 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 ba. That's the most common drum fill played on the toms. Is a Tihai. Dagga dagga da, dagga dagga da, dagga dagga da. 3 phrases exactly the same, spaced out in a way equally that lands on the downbeat of the cycle. I did say I was going to be technical, didn't I? Many Tihais are passed down generation to generation within the Gharana or house school. And they are learnt by memory, and they are intricate passages with a lot of preparation and a lot of mathematical preparation behind them. But when you hear them performed, they are simply wowing. When I watch a Tihai and 2 players digressing and then coming back, it has that feeling of yes, they did it, even though it looked like it wasn't going to happen. One of the advantages of learning on a one-to-one basis with a coach or with a guru or a personal tutor is that you will have access to a vast repertoire of Tihais and oral traditions. That's very useful if you want to become a maestro or a classical soloist. However, if you want to play with a band or play fusion music, or perhaps just play tablas for your own personal enjoyment. I would say it's unnecessary to learn a whole vast repertoire of Tihais. If you are somebody who just wants to follow the enjoyment route, as I call it, maybe just play for your own pleasure, perhaps play with a band, and not go down the serious I want to be a maestro route, then it's quite easy to pick up a few Tihais from listening to recordings, maybe ask a few friends, or even watch some players. And then you can have a few Tihais at your discretion to throw in occasionally during your performances. And that's perfectly sufficient. I did that. I never had a guru. I'm completely self-taught. And it's really worked for me just to have a few at my fingertips that I can pull out of the bag if I need to.